Hello, welcome to episode 27 of Personality Typing with Habib. Today we have a special episode in the sense of I feel like the gravity of it is huge. Um, we're going to be covering Jeffrey Epstein today in terms of doing the personality typing analysis. And this is the darkness edition. I'm going with light versus dark. Previously, we had an episode with Thomas Massie, who is more on the light side. And this episode, we're covering a dark situation. And happy 4th of July to people who are celebrating that. Yep, I live in United States. And yeah, we have the 250th birthday for America or United States of America. But yeah, as usual, the disclaimer is that no type accuracy guarantees, although I feel pretty good about this one in particular. Jeffrey Epstein, you either know as much about this or you don't. I'm not going to be able to really explain everything about who this person is. But yeah, I think there are some huge problems with this person and their connections with certain individuals and all that and what they did. It's very hard to put into words. But yeah, so in this video, we're going to go over a tiny recap on Thomas Massie, the previous episode, and then we're going to get into a first impression of Jeffrey Epstein and kind of look at some clips, kind of do a behavioral analysis using personality typology as a lens, and then we're going to get a final guess for Jeffrey Epstein's type. And then we're going to do a next episode preview where, the next episode is not a darkness episode. So we'll be able to climb out of this. And if you want to skip this episode, feel free to do so. The subject matter is quite heavy in a way. It's hard for me to even do this, but I'm here and, I'm trying to do it the best way possible. We're going to try to stay professional here and all that. And yeah, let's do it. So, previous episode, we had Thomas Massie, a genuinely good guy, I think, and at least someone who is standing for principles that are bigger than him in terms of a lot of things. And without getting into that, just watch the episode if you haven't. We got him as an ISTP, which, we'll see a little bit of today in terms of you can have good versions of this type or less good or bad versions of this type, actually. But, ISTPs can come in many flavors. And, Thomas Massie is a pretty good dude. I did change the guess a little bit. Is it consume, sleep, play or consume, sleep, blast? I'm not really sure. Is it number 4 or number 3? I don't know. And then is he double feminine or MF? Actually, maybe I should stick with double feminine. So it's hard to say, but I just changed the guess here just to signal that, hey, these coins I'm pretty 50-50 on. So I know he's an ISTP. I know he's consumed sleep, but outside of that, it's like pretty difficult to tell like the last couple coins. But I think he is a good dude. And yeah, that's as far as typology goes, like you really just need to figure out the 80-20 just to get you some growth, some good perspective on what you're working with. So yeah, the Thomas Massie class is very good. I think it's sad that he lost his election due to $35 million being spent in his race from AIPAC and the corporate lobbies. These are not good for the country. And yeah, this is the 250th birthday, so I got to say something about it. Thomas Massie and I probably disagree on so many things, but we agree on, I think, the important stuff. And for that, I put him in the light category. So I think, we have more people like Thomas Massie, this country would go in a much better direction. And actually people supporting people like this is very important too. And having those conversations with neighbors and whatnot, this is the time for the country to fight for the soul and the spirit of it. Speaking of which, fighting for the soul and the spirit, we're going to get into the class, and it's Jeffrey Epstein. So my first impression is that Jeffrey Epstein is something like an ISTP. We're kind of getting the type out of the way in a way. The last few coins are challenging in terms of like what is his animal stack or level of introversion, or even the modalities. We call them the sexual modalities, whether it's masculine, feminine. These are biological terms. Um, but really, it's openness. Feminine is more open, masculine is more solid. For example, I put here on my tag today that I'm double masculine, just to show that, hey, I'm double masculine. We got Anthony Bourdain, who's double masculine. We have Simon Cowell, who's double masculine, and we have Pete Davidson, who I'm reminded of as well with Jeffrey Epstein. He's audio, which is MF, masculine sensor, feminine tribe. But if you have masculine sensor with masculine tribe, you're going to be double masculine. You have that thicker skin. You could see Anthony Bourdain and Jeffrey Epstein have that thicker skin. It kind of just looks that way. Kinesthetic. But yeah, this is really good to see. And even people on the internet have noticed that Anthony Bourdain and Jeffrey Epstein look similar. So yeah, there's some funny stuff on the internet about that. But yeah, I mean, this topic is quite heavy. So whatever sense of humor you can have about it, the better. But yeah, there's a lot of dark stuff to walk through. But yeah, have I seen a lot of good ISTPs? Yes. But just because Jeffrey Epstein reminds me of these other ISTPs, does that say all ISTPs are, problematic? No. So that's why the type racism is pretty dangerous. But, it's the individual person who has gone through, a battle for their own soul, or where they might lose their soul. And in that case, they might do very dark things. And that's what I believe is the case with Jeffrey Epstein, is kind of doing the opposite of good whenever you're presented with a decision. And understanding the nature of evil, or the nature of, bad, like making a bad choice, it's kind of easy, yeah, it's like taking a shortcut, worshiping intelligence, worshiping IQ. These are things that lead you down a dark path, actually. And yeah, it's there's more to that. But anyway, we'll see little by little through the clips. I said there's 3 videos here, but there's really only one video of Jeffrey Epstein. The interview he did with Steve Bannon. There are maybe some other interviews out there for like when he's in court, but I didn't put that in here because I don't need it necessarily. Well, I used it, but I don't need to put it in here. So yeah, anyway, in this video, he's talking to Steve Bannon, who I believe has opposite functions. That's why they're kind of talking past each other, and they don't really understand where the other person is coming from, why the questions are being phrased that way, but they're still buddying up, basically, even though Steve Bannon calls him out for being kind of an evil person. Steve Bannon has the NF as the higher functions, so he can see, hey, this guy is evil, but Steve Bannon will still have conversations with him. Just because you see someone is a bad person, you can still make a choice to spend more time with them, which is what Steve Bannon chooses to do. Is that the right thing or the wrong thing? That's I would say it's it's wrong, but there's different ways to go about it. And I think there are broader conversations to have about good and evil that is for a later discussion. But in this video, we are doing the typing. We're going to figure out the personality type, as well as trying to extract from it what can we learn about, first of all, the personality type of ISTP, but also, where does it go wrong, and where can it go wrong for anyone's type of, you can go left or right. You can take a shortcut here or there. And how does that lead you to a dark place? But anyway, we're going to listen to the first clip where we're getting to know Jeffrey in a way. Steve Bannon has the introverted feeling as his second function, so he's going to be asking an FI question. But Jeffrey Epstein doesn't have access to his own feelings about things, so it's going to be a little weird for his answer. So let's check it out. The question from Steve Bannon is quite long, so it's like about a minute of questioning before Jeffrey talks, so that's a warning for you. But also signals introvert, so keep an eye out for that.
to be in a situation that you're one of the greatest financial minds in the world, looked at by world leaders and asked their, your thinking by the most prominent and important people in the world. And here you are in solitary confinement. You got to make a collect call to somebody. Did it strike you at the time how all the threads of your life had come together and put you in a position, or you had put yourself in that position?
No.
So it never struck you when you had to make one of your 50% of your collect calls that day, you call the president or the head of the CEO of Bear Stearns, the biggest financial event in your life is taking place, of which one, every important person in the world would be seeking your opinion. Number two would be a once in a lifetime opportunity to apply your craft. Number three, it would be a once in a lifetime opportunity to make money if you were smart, and obviously you're smart. You're telling me here, truthfully, that it never hit you at all of how you'd ended up in a place where you had to make a collect phone call from a jail cell that was 6x9 with a steel bed and your food being passed in through a slot.
The question you want to ask is, who was the other call to?
Okay. Who was the other call to?
The other call was to my friend at JP Morgan, who was then, I didn't know it at the time, trying to buy Bear Stearns. So at one point, I had two phones. It was difficult because they're afraid people are going to hang themselves with the phone cord. So they don't actually come together and they're pretty short. So I was actually going between two phones talking to Bear Stearns and JP Morgan at the same time. So I found it amusing.
And it never struck you about how to end up in a situation like this?
No, that would be probably means I would be too self-aware.
You can't possibly expect me to believe this.
I know. I don't believe it.
You're telling me that during that day, you never had a moment. You sat there and go, what the fuck have I done with my life that I'm in a 6x9 jail cell when I should be on a trading desk, or I should be in my $250 million, the greatest townhouse in New York City, taking calls from the king of Saudi Arabia, the president of China, the head of Russia, the president of the United States, to save the world's population from a financial debacle. You honestly expect me to believe that never happened?
You're suggesting I was somewhat depressed, and how could this happen to me?
I'm not saying depressed. I'm saying a moment of awareness of how could I get myself into this situation.
No, I would just say how strange that this happens. It's strange. I'm wearing a jumpsuit and flip-flops.
What color was the jumpsuit?
Brown.
Brown jumpsuit.
Yes.
All right. So you could see that Jeffrey Epstein is not really self-reflecting. He doesn't have the self-awareness. He doesn't have like a, hey, I might have done something bad here. He doesn't have that kind of consciousness or conscience. He doesn't have that, that aspect of your soul where you kind of self-reflect and have self-awareness as to like, hey, maybe I did something, to land me in this place. And Steve Bannon presses him on this. It's like, hey, I have NEFI. Are you doing any NEFI? Are you doing any extroverted intuition? Are you thinking about the possibilities of why you're here? Are you doing any introverted feeling? Are you reflecting on how you feel about this? And he's like, what? Am I depressed? And so this is a pretty interesting link between, the TIFE axis and how they process feelings versus how the FITE axis processes feelings. If you talk to the TI folks, they're like, oh, if I have feelings, that must mean I'm depressed or something. Some people, who have that stuck fixed mindset around feelings, they might say something like this response here. And so when it comes to feelings, when he's trying to talk about his feelings, he's saying, hey, there are these guys over here and those guys over there. They're asking me questions on multiple phones, or I'm not sure exactly what he means by that, but like, he's reflecting the feelings outwards, and there are these important people who want my attention, or anyway, that's what this part of the clip shows me, is that his feelings are more extroverted and he doesn't really have access to them quite as easily. And yeah, it's just going right over his head. And he's pretty introverted in terms of, you can see this in interviews, that the introverts don't take over the interview. They're just kind of like waiting to see, like, what are you going to ask me? And like, is that a good question or not? You know, they're not kind of jumping up and saying like, hey, like, this is the right interview to do, you know, like they would they would actually be controlling the interview more if they're a blaster or if they're more extroverted. So yeah, anyway, moving on. So what I get from that is introvert, and then I'm saying introverted thinking because the FI question doesn't get addressed. You know, there's no internal reflection from a feeling state or any state. It's more about the thinking style. So yeah, in this next clip, we're going to see quite a bit, you know, so we're only really going to have like 5 or 6 main clips of Jeffrey Epstein. So we're going to try to squeeze as much out of these as we can. And it's not going to be hard to see. So we're trying to prove, is this gathering over organizing or organizing over gathering? He's going to have a bit of an answer around complexity and nuance. And in this clip, complexity is actually represented by the OE or the SE function. In this case, you know, sometimes it could be extroverted intuition, but in this case, it's going to be more extroverted sensing. But it's that, hey, don't narrow me down. And, you know, you can't really predict or plan things. So that's what this clip is going to be about. But it's up to you to kind of use your own prediction engine and see what you think the clip is about. So let's check it out.
Let's go back to the spring of 2008. Were you so wrapped up in your personal issues at the time you were not spending enough time on the financial markets, or were you deeply involved in the financial markets like you normally were?
No, I was involved.
And you, so we're saying that the smartest guy in the room didn't see it coming.
No, of course
The
not.
bankruptcy of Bear Stearns, you just thought was a Bear Stearns problem. You didn't see it as systemic.
I know you keep harping on it, but it's not
because you're a mathematician and understands systems.
It
seems that anybody that understands that they had a systemic problem, you at least be the first on the early search radar. If you're not going to see it, then I'm really afraid, because that means that I always assume there's at least a set of guys out there that have some sort of sense that something's not right.
Imagine the guy who has a stroke or had the heart attack. When you ask him, did you feel funny the day before? He's going to tell you, yeah, I didn't feel right. Something was off. I didn't feel right. I had my stomach was right. I felt a little dizzy. I felt a little weak. But if you asked him that day before, do you think you're going to have a heart attack tomorrow? He'd say, no, I just feel a little weak. I'm a little dizzy. My stomach hurts. So these systems, and that's the issue of complexity. What complexity says is that, in fact, everything seems to go along, and people have seen it. One of the great examples of complex systems is sand dunes. In fact, the sand keeps building up. People have seen some, and all of a sudden, one more sand drop, and all the sand starts running down the hills.
All right. Yeah, that's enough. So I have extroverted sensing as well, masculine SE, and you know, having SE over NI, it's like you feel like you can't predict what's going to happen. Is like the financial collapse. He was in a great position to see it coming, but he didn't see it coming, or at least he is saying that he didn't see it coming. And so, yeah, that's the issue. You know, the SE over NI, they're not very well. If they're not healthy or they're not using it properly, if they're not using all their functions, they're not going to be able to predict. But if you are using all your functions, then you might be able to predict. But Jeffrey Epstein certainly is not accessing, you know, his full stack, and that's why it's important to have a bit more of a balance over your type. But yeah, so it's just sad to see how the complexity just becomes an excuse for not planning, not predicting, not having certain categories for, hey, this thing might go south. Let's do some risk assessment. You know, that would be more introverted intuition of like, let's do some insurance or, you know, risk mitigation, you know. But he's not really thinking about that because he has extroverted sensing over introverted intuition. But yeah, complexity and nuance is good to watch out for, but you do it too much and you end up not being able to plan or predict. Yeah. So in the next clip, we're going to see more of like his ST blockhead side. And he's going to describe the soul. And there's a bit of a surprising answer here where he does talk about the soul and believing in it. But there's a kind of interesting logic that you can follow. And let's see that. I'll comment about it after. So we're looking for, is he more ST or is he more NF?
The difference formulaically between things that are alive and things that are dead? The answer is no. The things that are alive in my world are miracles, not magic. Magic has a bad connotation.
We
trying
don't
to
believe
hide
in
things.
you don't believe in the spirit or the soul. That's what animates people, is your spirit or your soul. That's
No.
have you ever seen someone die? When they die, their spirit leaves.
Their soul leaves, no question. So in
There's
fact,
no question to you about
no
that.
question.
There's no question to you that there is some animating life force within us that leaves when you're dead.
Yes, in fact, I refer to the soul. This obviously a certain the questions in the past, even
Because
during
people would normally think you were soulless. So
Thank you.
have you talk about you actually believe in it and have done some thinking about it is pretty shocking in its own right, isn't it?
Well, again, mathematics, Leibniz thought.
So Newton was at Cambridge and he was the head of the math department, right? He's a professor, essentially.
Yes.
But Leibniz, who was Leibniz a German?
All right. Yeah. So he does acknowledge the soul existing, and he kind of has, he's going to Leibniz, he's going to these other people for the NT because he doesn't have NT savior, right? So that's why he's gathering all these intelligent people around him, because he doesn't do it himself. He doesn't obligate himself to that, and he wants to outsource the NT. But he has ST. He has ST and he has SF, right? So the SF to persuade and push people to do things, and the ST to kind of store and account. That's why he's accountant. That's why he's doing math and things like that, to just account for all that. But his description of the soul is pretty mechanical in a way. And it's just like, just because he acknowledges the soul doesn't mean he's not soulless. It's more like, when you hear some of the survivors' language, it's like he relished in the idea of, basically like seeing their soul leave their body, like, or something like this, where by attacking the soul, there's kind of a pleasure in that for this kind of person. And so there's an awareness of the existence of a soul, but it's not a respect for it, so that's what I think this clip, and I'll leave it in the description. You can watch as much as you want, caution. But yeah, so his description of the soul, I found it to be very ST. And then from a character perspective, I think just because he acknowledges the soul, I know it sounds like interesting for that. Like, whoa, he actually knows the existence of souls, but it doesn't mean he has a positive, a perception of other people's souls. It doesn't mean he wants to help people in that way. And it's, if you ever hear any of the survivors' stories, like, you'll get a better understanding of how exactly this person is. But we're just doing the typing here because it's a dark individual and we're trying to understand this stuff. But yeah, I would say one of my core thesis around Jeffrey Epstein is like, it's a cautionary tale that the worship of intelligence is in a way dark in and of itself, trying to explain and over explain feelings and bring in Leibniz, bring in these things, the pursuit of money and intelligence for that to be the end as an end is destructive to the soul, and it's not respecting the other person on the other side of the conversation, or the other side of the room, or the other side of, the screens even. So yeah, we're understanding things here, and nature of evil, nature of good, nature of the soul. So in this clip, we're going to be looking at double observing, and he does talk about NT here, and the way he does it, it feels like it's not last. It feels like, and in this case, it would be TINI sleep. Now, because like the sleep last would be consume, play, blast, sleep, but then consume, play, sleep would have the sleep third. And so that's what we're checking here. And that's what I'm seeing. So let's check out some SENI double observing.
I won't digress too much, but Howard Gardner early on said, there's not one form of intelligence. It's not mathematical intelligence. There's emotional intelligence, this kinesthetic intelligence. You know, there's this argument that I reject that black people are less intelligent than white people. It's not true. We know, for example, that if I was in the forest and I had to run from the lion or figure out a way not to be eaten, and my competition is a local African, I'm the one who's getting eaten because they have the intelligence to deal with their local environment. So it's just different. It's not better, it's not worse, but there's many differences amongst different types of people. And so people have different intelligences and they excel in some intelligences usually and less so in others.
When did it come to, because the world of high finance is a world of pure reason, or is it a lot of emotion and gut checks and you know, on trading desk and central banks when these decisions get made? Is it that high church, like the high church of science?
Anyway, yeah, it is. I'm trying to watch out for how much of the clips I'm playing because I got stopped by the stream at some point in my previous video. But yeah, in this clip, the main point of me showing this was to show the SENI situation where he's describing intelligence in different ways. Like, hey, based on which place you're from, your locality, if I was in Africa, you know, the local population there have an intelligence that's designed to deal with that environment. And so you could see the extroverted sensing perception, like that lens, that view of intelligence, it's being filtered through the function of extroverted sensing. And that said, it's correct. I think that part is correct, right? So you have different kinds of intelligence, different brains can be good in different situations, right? And that's true. That said, you know, you should be able to predict financial collapse, that kind of thing, if that's your expertise, right? So yeah, complexity, nuance, OE, gathering is good in certain ways, but yeah, it doesn't, you still need to do both, right? You still need to categorize and understand the different categories. So anyway, in the next clip, so we're just going to be figuring out, is this an ISTP, right? We're trying to see introverted thinking and extroverted sensing. So this would be a kind of mechanic type, you know, like ISTPs are pretty much mechanical in a way. They understand technology. They understand how to engineer things and working on things. So he's going to be talking about compression and editing a little bit here. And you can see the double observing in the middle with the SENI. And the way he talks about it, like, ask yourself, does this sound like an ISTP? You know, yeah, let's check it out.
That we have to think about them differently. Music is a great example. It's a common man's example. You know, when you hear a certain song, it makes you feel a certain way. How does it do that? We don't know. We can't mathematize it. And even that music, Steve, nowadays we compress music. When you have a violin, it's compressed onto your iPhone. So what does compression mean? I'm taking lots of information and I'm cutting it into lots of pieces and squishing it together. And when I squish it or compress it, I have to take out lots of pieces, but I say that they're not very important pieces. It's those pieces that we take out when we compress data, to me, are the most interesting parts of life.
You just said a while ago, so part of this new search for science may go back to when people were actually talking about a soul, and you said there's no doubt in your mind that there is a soul. Describe for me what you mean by that. What do you mean by soul? What do you mean soul different than the physical analog body that we're seeing on film right now?
It's difficult to describe in words. I mean, I'm not a poet. Poems get a little closer to what that really means, but we can. Even the concept of what is life becomes complicated when you deal with plants and seeds. Is a seed alive? I don't know. Certain people would say, no, it's dead. When your banana, one of my favorite examples is the banana that's sitting on the countertop in your kitchen today. Is it alive or dead?
What do you think about human life?
Yeah, okay, he's going to talk about bananas. All right, so basically, the point of the compression and editing is that, you know, that's the introverted intuition editing out the parts that are not important, that are not the essence. And then but from an extroverted sensing perspective, what does he say? He says, I'm actually interested in that. I don't want to edit things out. I don't like, you know, he's like, those parts might have been important, you know? And yeah, so that's how he views compression. And I totally understand, you know, like even when I'm editing videos, it's very hard to edit things out because I'm like, wait a minute, there's actually information in the pauses, there's information in, you know, everything. Editing things out just feels like you're robbing the whole experience. And so anyway, you could hear the ISTP angle as well, because he's kind of tinkering and talking about things in terms of tools, but as a first function, it's just so natural that you just kind of look past it. But he's block banging with the thoughts and the logic of how feelings work and how value structures work through you know, all the functions, right? The first three functions are not feeling functions. It's Ti, Se, and I. And so he's just like puzzling out how feelings work, values work, and all that. And then he's talking about bananas. So that's just like your, you know, Se, not Ne, you know, extrovert intuition would probably come up with more clever examples or patterns. So the last clip I'm going to be using from this interview is the most talked about clip, where he eventually gets asked, are you the devil, you know? And are you the devil himself? But actually, and he says, why would you ask me that? But the thing is, Jeffrey Epstein, and you'll see it here, Jeffrey Epstein is the one who brings up the devil. He's the one who brings it up. So that's pretty, the whole thing is weird, but if you have curiosity about it, you know, that's, yeah, it's an interesting clip, you know, from a behavioral analysis perspective.
Why is it not dirty money?
Because I earned it. A heart.
But you earned it.
I earned it legally.
We went back to this before. You earned
Yes.
it. You earned it advising the worst people in the world, right? That do enormous bad things, and just to make more money.
So instead of asking me the question, should you take the money? Because I think it's a legitimate question.
Do you think it's a legitimate question?
Yes, no
Why?
question. Because I think ethics is always a complicated subject, but I can tell you that with the money I gave to help try to eradicate polio in Pakistan and India, instead of asking me whether that money should be given to these children for vaccines, I think you might want to ask their mothers who received the vaccine, who know their child now won't get polio, and ask them if Epstein should have helped these people.
If we walked in, you're a mathematician. We walked into that clinic where they're giving that money out to these people that are in the most dire straits of poverty and sickness, and told them that the money was coming from class 3 sexual predator?
Tier 1.
What's tier 1's the highest and worst?
No,
I'm the lowest.
I'm the lowest.
You're the lowest. Okay, tier 1, you're the lowest. But a criminal.
Yes.
That the money came from them. What percentage of people do you estimate? I understand you don't like probabilities. Do you estimate would say, I don't care, I want the money for my children?
I would say everyone said, I want the money for my children.
Did they know where the money came from?
I think if you told them, if I told them the devil,
100%.
the devil
himself.
The devil himself said, I'm going to exchange some dollars for your child's life.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
It's a serious question.
Sorry.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
I don't know. Why would you say that?
Because you have all the attributes. You're incredibly smart. You remember the devil is somebody knows smart? The devil's brilliant. You read Milton's Paradise Lost.
The devil scares me.
Satan is the he is.
All right. I can't stand the Steve Bannon part of the interview. But it is an interesting part to play off of. But is Jeffrey Epstein the devil himself? He's like, why would you say that? You know, and his response was very weird in general. I mean, yeah, and just like being compared to the devil, just looking in the mirror is anyway, it's just the whole thing is weird. I don't even feel like commenting about it. I forget what exactly I was going to say. But anyway, it's just a weird NF state. Yeah. So anyway, moving on. Yeah. Well, hold on. So the thing about it was like he's talking about the people who are getting cured of the diseases, and like, hey, wouldn't you take the cure even if from the devil himself? And so that's a philosophical question that people should ask themselves: is, would you take help from someone who's very negative? And this is, this is a battle for your soul. It's a battle for anyone's soul. Is like, would you accept help from a bad character? This is a question that we're all having to ask ourselves. We're having to ask society, with the Epstein files, with all these things. And so, yeah, this is the essential question. I probably have more to say on this. I'm just, yeah, I didn't prepare that much for that clip, but it is very weird. And from a character perspective, it's very weird. But yeah, we're moving on to the next clip because we're just focused on the type. And we're going to see some TIFE mechanics. And so now these clips are going to be about people talking about Epstein, right? There's just a few clips like this, and then we're going to be moving on to the guessing. But someone, I think from the CIA, is going to be talking about this, and can people handle the truth? And so this is the TIFE mechanics.
And is reluctant to be more transparent. Some of it is national security. Some of it is, let's imagine an ally of ours is involved in that operation. So there's a reluctance, and there's a question. It's a little bit like UFOs. Could the public handle it is the question that's always asked in these cases. Meaning, could the public handle it if, for example, the UK was running an intelligence operation inside the United States to control senators and congressmen and powerful executives and powerful figures and scientists? Could we handle it? Could the US public handle it? My take personally, absolutely yes.
So you believe that he was an intelligence asset, and it sounds like you believe he was an intelligence asset potentially by a US ally.
Yes.
So who is that ally?
Israel.
You believe that Epstein was an Israel intelligence asset?
Yes, I do. And Ghislaine Maxwell, just for additional background, but everybody can find it, her father was an Israeli intelligence asset who was so revered. His funeral ceremony was held in Israel, was attended by the prime minister, by I think the last 4 or 5, by every living head of Mossad attended. And there were words used in eulogies like he did things for Israel that the world will never know about. There's a lot of good connection there, and a lot of good.
Yeah, so there's a lot of connections, right? And this is someone who is kind of like a fixer in a way, and people who do things without, no questions asked. This is very much the TIFE axis at work, is that they do things that, without really caring so much about the ethics necessarily. Okay, I don't mean to put the whole thing under the bus. I don't mean to do that. Okay, but anyway, there are certain mechanics here. There's certain ways where when you're doing the thinker work, whenever you're operating from a mode of thinking, you're throwing ethics out of the equation. And so the truth becomes very dirty, very murky. And so you need FE, you need extroverted feeling to help people handle the truth, handle the TI. The TI is going to do some crazy stuff, and the extroverted feeling's job is to help people handle it. So the question is, can the American people, or can the people of the world, handle the truth about these Epstein files, right? And the implications of all this. And this guy says, yes, people are ready to know. And I hope people are ready to know. And I think people are demanding information. But yeah, so, and one thing I'll say is that I'll just say something about conspiracy theories in general. It seems like a lot of conspiracy theorists were vindicated in the last several months. And so EPs, it's our time to shine. No, but like, I think especially in the personality space, it's time for everyone to be a little bit more of an EP, be a little bit more understanding of what is going on, what is real information, but you still can't go full crazy. You can't go full, you have to understand what the information is, which parts were correct, which parts are overblown. And the Israel connection does seem to be a legitimate connection. That said, in the next clip, so we only have 2 or 3 left, I think, and this one is about the SEFE play, guilt, shame tactics. So it's more, I'm not trying to say anything bad about the functions, right? But they can be used, any cognitive function can be used in a negative way. It's actually going to be about blackmail and how that works. Let's check it out.
Getting those kinds of, doing those kinds of things would be a useful asset for this foreign adversary to have.
Sure. Blackmail is not always done by calling you up and saying, hey, Stephen, I'm going to hurt you in the following way if you don't do A, B, or C. The other version is far better, which is even alluded to in some of the now released material, which is he calls and he says, Stephen, I've got terrible news. You remember you had that massage from Cindy? You know, that girl, Cindy. Oh, yeah. I remember. Well, she recorded something. She had something in her bag. She made a recording. And I got worse news, Stephen. The girl's 16 and a half. And now, by the way, you are stomach drops, diarrhea. You are in a world of stress right now, just hearing that. And he, instead of being your blackmailer, becomes your rescuer. He says, I can handle it. I can handle it. I can handle it. She's got the recordings. I don't know where they are, but I can handle it. I can handle it. I can handle it. Don't worry. Don't worry. Don't worry. And he owns you now forever. If you were involved in a naked experience with someone who's underage, and there's a video of it and audio of it as well, you will do anything that you are asked to do that is within reason. Very few people would have the character and the stamina to do what you describe Bezos doing, which is that he wrote a public letter saying a very unusual thing happened to me the other day. I'm being blackmailed by the National Enquirer. And here's what they said.
And then he goes on to talk about how Stephen from Diary of a CEO is also potentially someone who Epstein would have gone after and things like this. So this is what, so why are we going over these clips that don't have Epstein actually in it, is that when you have that much of a reputation, you know, people talking about you, it actually gives some insight into typing. And this guilt, shame tactics, like being able to play the other side, being able to fake your emotions, you know, that's part of extroverted feeling, no offense intended. So yeah, so that's how blackmailing works, at least as this person is describing it. That's, you know, it could work in a number of ways, but this is, one way of how it's working. And yeah, so that's just to kind of get a solid guess as to what functions are at play and just confirmations. Because if the type is correct that he is an ISTP, you should be seeing a sphere of people talking about the SEFE functions, the TINI functions. You know, you should be hearing, oh, this guy's going after intelligent people. You know, so this is how an ISTP would conduct themselves if they were Jeffrey Epstein. And yeah, so and it's interesting from an IP perspective how much importance and significance and grandiosity, ego, pride, all that stuff plays into this. Like people have goals and dreams, and those get played into a lot of the Epstein dynamics and the network itself. So there's so many implications from the type that just have broader implications. And so in this clip, so this is the last video we're going to watch. And there's just going to be 2 clips from this first minute. So we're going to watch 1 minute of just the first, the intro, which is going to have different segments of the video. It's this person's podcast or something where you're just going to hear some highlights of what the survivor went through, what the survivor has to say. And the survivor's name is Marina, and she's public about it. So that's, it's good for the cause, for helping people in similar situations and speaking up about it, speaking the truth. But yeah, let's get a glimpse as to what the issues are at play, because I know I've played a lot of other clips just from Epstein directly because we're doing the typing, but let's get a feel for what the heck are some of these issues. Just, a minute.
Do you believe Jeffrey Epstein actually killed himself?
Absolutely not.
Who do you think had him killed?
I don't think he's dead.
Think he's still alive?
I think so. Knowing Jeffrey Epstein for 3 years, he would never go down in history as a man that killed himself or allowed somebody to kill him. His ego and his pride is through the roof.
So if you think he's still alive, where do you think he is?
Totally laughing at us. I think he's in Israel. I was 14 when I met Jeffrey. I started working at 12. And she turns to me one day and she says, I know this really rich and powerful guy, and he really likes to get massages from young girls. It's just a massage, Marina. Like, you've been through so much worse with your stepfather. I'm just like looking around, and there's like pictures of Prince Andrews, President Trump, Bill Clinton. I'm pretty sure there was so many other people that I didn't know at the time, you know, because I was just 14 years old. He would tell us, he's like, I own the banks, I own the presidents, I know a lot about people. And if I share what I know, it would be a disaster.
Today's podcast guest is someone that I admire and respect a ton.
Yep. So this is, I recommend you go watch this video on your own. I will be linking it in the description, but you can see it here as well. It's on YouTube. And yeah, I think it's important to hear some of these survivors' stories. I think there's actually a lot of lessons from them. But in terms of like what the operation was, people have only seen glimpses of this because it does go very wide, very broad, and it implicates a lot of people in the government. It implicates a lot of celebrities, a lot of rich people, and people with status and things like this. Yeah. So anyway, you know, that's what these, you know, given that I'm going to type this person ISTP, you know, you're seeing a little bit of the implications as to like, what does it mean? What can this network turn into? You know, there's a difference between an ISTP creating this kind of Epstein network versus someone who, let's say, is an ENTP or an ESFP. Like, that would be a much more different, it would be a different type of approach to this kind of problem, this kind of situation. But yeah, so this last clip, this is the last video clip. It's going to be a little bit about Epstein. And for a couple minutes, we're going to see kind of Marina, who is a survivor, her opinion of, you know, Epstein. And, you know, she's going to comment about the devil clip that we just saw earlier. So let's check this out.
Mexico.
Yep.
And they just did some stuff publicly about that, like about the bodies.
It was a whole movement, but
Yeah.
now they stopped it. You see how it's not anywhere in the news? Nobody's talking about it anymore. See, like, it stopped. Nobody's talking about it. They wanted to investigate it. They wanted to like go investigate the backfields or whatever it was, like where they say they buried girls and they buried, you know, these babies. And now what happened? Nobody even knows, right? It's just like off the radar, right? And we did not know that. But a lot of the girls say, wow, Jeffrey was so charismatic. He was so nice. He was this, he was that. I grew up in the street. So I think there's a gift growing up in the street. And I think some people can agree with me. Sometimes we can read people. We can tell right away if they're a good person or if they're a bad person, right? And if they have some sort of Satan kind of ways, right? Jeffrey always had a look. He was nice to us. Obviously, what he did was not nice to us, but he was a nice person. He wasn't, you know, he didn't do any of these things to us, but he always had a look in his face where he looked like the devil. And if you look at some of his interviews, they had asked him a question about something about if he was the devil himself. And the way he answered it with the smirk on his face and the way he winked his eye, it was almost like, oh my God, you are the devil, you know? So, and then when you also see there's a video of him going like, where he's like looking at his mouth. In Brazil, they had a reporter, a journalist look into it. And that's from that pimple or that thing that he got on his lips. That's from eating human flesh.
Yep. All right. So that's enough of that. But yeah, the story goes deep. It's dark. It's disturbing. I try to put it on the slide. How much can I warn people? I don't know. But yes, Marina is, I found her to be a very good person to listen to about what, you know, she went through and all this. And she seems to have a good mindset about it. I think her type might be similar, not too dissimilar from AOC or something. I don't know. I don't know exactly her type. I'm not sure, but she seems to be capable of talking, blasting about this. But anyway, it's not exactly about her, more about what she said about Epstein kind of being like the devil himself, and people forgetting things through the news cycle and all that. And so why it's interesting to comment on from a type perspective is that when you have the beta quadra of NFJs and STPs, part of the techniques that they deploy are things like pushing the media cycle, pushing the narratives. You know, NFJs are known as magicians, STPs are known as mechanics, and then you got people like Trump, who did The Apprentice. So the SEFE play, the FESE play is like soap opera like. It's just putting this drama, putting this show, putting these actors and people are acting like magicians and things like this, and just pushing narratives and all this. And so when it comes to Epstein files, like, they just like to push the narrative aside. They like to push just more darkness onto the world in that sense. And so being able to see through it, this is the signal finding that we all need to do in order to find the truth. Not only do we need to handle the TI truth, but we need to be able to see through using NI and see the essence and the important things out of the mess of SE, right? And have our own valuing, whether it's FI or TI, finding the significant data points, the significant connections through all the, the messy information and all that. So anyway, the next slide, I'm not going to be playing any more clips. So this one was, it was an emotional one, and it's a good one. But basically in this video, it's a short one. I will link it in the description, but she says, it's Kiki, and she says, it's ironic he had so many security cameras, in his mansion. It's as if he was worried he was going to be hurt or threatened by someone. And the way she talks about it, it just made me feel like, and that's why I put it in the description for myself here, that I'm double masculine, because I can feel this type of energy in the sense of like the masculine tribe, when you have that function, you do feel very threatened by other people, even when you are the danger. And so in this case, she was saying that, hey, Epstein is a dangerous guy, but he was simultaneously worried about his own safety. And you could almost see it in that last clip I showed, where he's like, why would you say that? Why would you call me the devil? And it's just this feminine self that it's crazy to think that the monsters themselves are vulnerable, and I'm double masculine too, so I think it's okay if I say, monsters, but like, I'm not saying double masculine people are monsters. I'm saying that, in an unhealthy state, they can still feel, because you have feminine self, a feminine, more open sense of self. It's very leaky, it doesn't, it's not solid. You don't have that solid identity, so you can feel pretty insecure. And that's what Jeffrey Epstein was probably going through. He probably was very insecure, deeply insecure in all this, but that doesn't make things good. That's still bad, and that's why you need to have checks in place, checks and balances, checks on power, checks on a lot of things. And people need to deal with that. So anyway, all these videos will be in the description. You can check them out yourself. It's time to narrow down the guess. The first narrow down I have is some kind of STP. Okay, TI, SE, he's mechanical, he's physical in that sense, and it's probably masculine sensory, right? This is easy. Donald Trump's in here, over there, and it's consume, play, blast, sleep, last, and they got on very well. So how is the relationship between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump? They're very close, almost like best friends. And so, that's a question. I mean, I'm not trying to make any of this about Trump, but I'm just saying from a function perspective, they have similar functions. And the next narrow down is to say he's introverted. So unlike Trump, he's more on the introvert side. He's more kind of building his systems, building his things, building his network, and he's really thinking about these, even though he's inviting other people who are intelligent, who are researchers, who are in the science fields, people who are innovators, he himself is not doing the NT, but he's able to process that. And that's the introverted aspect. And double activated consume with blast last, he's able to consume and take in everybody's research. So he's learning all kinds of information. Is it doing him any good? Not necessarily, but you can certainly explain this or that. And that's why explanation intelligence has a limitation. If you're not using your soul, if you're not using ethics, has a limitation. And so the next and final narrow down, I'm saying that he's TISE. He's a decider. He's in the consume, play, sleep, blast, last category. He is able to do some extroverted things with play, and he's also able to do some introverted things with the double activated consume and taking in people's research and all that. And if you watch the full interview, there are some topics like finance and whatnot that he does know about, and there's some good lessons for most people. And the reason why I say number 4 is because I am seeing, first of all, that he's a social decider. He's either a number 1 or number 4. You know, that's kind of obvious. He's not worrying about his career the way a number 2 or 3 would. He doesn't care about the entrepreneurship in that way. But he is either a number 1 or number 4. But the reason why I go number 4 is because it seems like he might be a specialist. He might be a specialist, and he might be tribe motivated in the sense that people are asking about, hey, Epstein, who are your friends? Oh, you have a list of friends. You're connected to this person. And he was able to put certain people at ease in terms of from a charismatic perspective. And the way he did it was different from the way Donald Trump did it. Donald Trump, he has charisma as a number 1, you know, showing off. But Jeffrey Epstein had a different style of charisma, which is more the number 4 style. I have more to say on this, but I'm not really prepared to talk too much about that. But yeah, proving at the very least that he's an ISTP. So my final guess, well, this is the first guess, is that he's double masculine, TISE, consume, play, sleep, blast, last, number 4. So that's where I landed. An alternate guess would have been a number 1, right? A number 1 social type. And then, yeah, so the final guess is number 4. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with the guess, and good to know what this dark individual is like in terms of personality, cognition. Now, there are going to be people of this type or similar type who are good people, you know, there's obviously, right? But this person has a lot of struggles, has a lot of fear, is endlessly pursuing intellect, power, money, greed, pleasure, sex, all this. And those pursuits without introverted feeling, that's why Steve Bannon was asking that FI question in the beginning. It's like, you're not self-reflecting. You're not doing any reflection on what the values are. And just because you know there is a soul doesn't mean you actually care about it. And so not being able to access your 4th function, not using your 4th function, and people not, society not forcing you to use your 4th function, it is causing problems in that way. But anyway, so that was my final guess. Double masculine, ISTP, consume, play, sleep, blast, last, number 4. I probably have more to say, but yeah, it's honestly very dark and heavy for me to even talk about this at all. So yeah, we're moving on. And this is from last time: signal versus noise. Pay attention to the signal, ignore the noise, or put the noise aside for a bit. Pay attention to the signal. I think you're ready to handle the truth. And a small note on healthy ISTP versus unhealthy ISTP. You know, there are very good versions of that exact type out there. And yeah, so in 2 weeks, I'm going to be typing Abdul El Sayed, who is a doctor, an epidemiologist, and he's a candidate for the U.S. Senate in Michigan. This is going to be a light episode. It's someone who's advocating for Medicare for all, as well as a lot of other good things. You can check out their campaign website. Not that I'm, you know, sponsored by this, but like, I think it's good to head in the right direction. You know, we did Thomas Massie previous episode, and I think it's important, at least, you know, to vote for people and look for people in the country, in the United States, in the world, everyone's country. You know, I'm pretty happy with Zoran Mamdani here in New York. And I think every city, every country should seek the opportunity to elect for people who are advocating for good things. Like America, we have very bad healthcare, you know, and we need to fix that. And I think Abdul El Sayed is doing some good work in that regard. He's endorsed recently by AOC. But yeah, I understand, there are people who are good on the Republican side and the Democrat side or whatever, but like most of them are crap. Most of them are crap. The left-right dynamic, that's a pretty weird thing. Yeah, anyway, not going to talk about that, but we're going to be focused on the typing. And yeah, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. I do have one-on-one coaching in the end there, in the description. Take care. Have a good one. I hope this was good.